Hello, this is Brennan Horton, the instructor with Del Mar College Veterans Upward Bound. Welcome to our Microsoft Word Spring 2021 workshop. Let's go ahead and get started. When I was preparing for this workshop, I went back and looked at the Microsoft Word presentation I gave last semester. Maybe some of you attended that, and when we did that, I went over Microsoft Word, but also how to format an essay for a citation. I found that that was a little bit too much, so this time around we've kind of condensed it down to just Word. I wanted to give you all a little bit of background about Word as well. So Microsoft Office is a suite of computer software that's intended for use in the workplace environment as well as in education. So you use it primarily for education, but once you're out of school and you're going to get a job after you've got your degree, the software you learned through Microsoft Office, which includes Word, will be very helpful for you. Microsoft Word is the most popular and widely used Office software, and it's what's known as a word processor, which basically just means it's a fancy typewriter that lets you edit your text as you type it. The first thing you want to do when you want to go to Microsoft Word is, well, you want to create a file. And there's a couple different ways we can create or open a file. We'll start by opening a file that already exists. So on a Windows PC or on an Apple computer, when you have a desktop, what you can do is you can just go to your file and you can double click on it and it will open your file for you. So here I have a sample file. And now we've got Microsoft Word up. And that's one way we can do this. Another way we can do this is we can use the File Explorer. So let's say you have a file on a thumb drive or you've downloaded it from the internet and it's not on your desktop and you need to go find it. So the one way you can do this is you can use the File Explorer. Now for most of you, the taskbar is going to be on the bottom of the screen, but if I just move my mouse to the left side of the screen for me, for you, you would move to the bottom of the screen. You'll have this little icon. That's the File Explorer. So if we click on that, and we get this little quick access. This is on Windows. We'll get quick access. And I want to go to a place where I have a file. Now we'll just go to desktop and use the same example. But I want to show you in the File Explorer, it'll look like this. I just want to go and select my sample file too. Again, I just double click it, and it'll open. But what if I don't already have a file? What if I want to create a new file from scratch? Well, there's a couple ways we can do that as well. One of the easiest ways, again, is go to your desktop and you just right click anywhere. And when you do that, you'll get a couple of options. And I want to go down here near the bottom where it says new. Then I want to go down here. I've got a couple of different options. I want to select Microsoft Word document. Now one advantage of doing it this way is when you create a new file, it's automatically going to pop up the renaming option. So let's call this sample file 3. Okay. So now I have a new file, and if I just drag it over here, I want to double click on that and open it. So I've created and named my file. Now another way we can create new files is if we go to the Windows key. So on your keyboard, the Windows key will be near the bottom left corner next to Control. Or if you don't have a Windows-based keyboard, you can go over to the taskbar again. And for me, it's in the top left corner. For you, it'll be in the bottom left corner here where I have my notifications button. But if I click on that, and then I start typing, I can type out Word, and it'll pop up here. I press Enter, and it'll open Word for me. So this brings us to the template selector. There's a couple things you can notice here. The first thing I want you to notice near the top, you see where it says new. I've got blank document, welcome to Word, single space blank. It's got a couple of different templates. Now most of the time you don't really need to use the templates, but these can be useful and you can download other templates online and that way you don't have to format for a specific type of project that you're working on. But most of the time you just want to use blank document, so we'll click on blank document, and that brings us to our main window for Microsoft Word. So there's a lot going on here, especially at the top of the screen. The top taskbar, the ribbon there, is kind of intimidating, so we're just going to start in the middle. In the middle of this part is called the document viewer. And the document viewer is very straightforward. It's like a piece of paper. It's supposed to model a piece of paper. And we can just write like we're writing on a piece of paper. So I'm going to go ahead and write an example piece of text here. The brown fox jumped over the gray hound. Great. So now that we have text here, we can look at how we can modify this text. All right. Next, at the very top of the screen, you'll see this blue ribbon at the top. This is the Microsoft Office taskbar. This is the same for Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Microsoft Excel. So you'll notice here on the far left we have the autosave button. You'll notice it's off. If I click on the off button, it'll give me an option to select a OneDrive account to sync my saved files to. I have 2 OneDrive accounts, but we don't actually want to save this one. I just wanted to show you where that's at. So if you have a OneDrive account, which you will if you're a Del Mar student, you can use your Del Mar account. You can see I've got my Del Mar options popping up. And you can just choose that one, and it'll automatically save your files to the cloud. Next to that, we have also the save button. We can just click on that save button at any time to save our file. To the right of that, we have undo and redo. So if I click on this, it will untype what I just typed, and if I click on this, it will bring it back. Further over here to the right, you can see where it says document 1. That's the name of our file. It hasn't been named yet. When it says something like document 1, it usually means that you haven't saved anything yet. To the right of that, we have a search bar. This search bar helps you find tips within Microsoft Word. It's not for searching your document itself. And then to the right of that, you see where it says my name. It's got a little picture from me. That is where you sign in to Microsoft Office. So I'm currently signed in on my personal account, but you can also sign in through your professional or your Del Mar account. Okay. Next down here we have this part, the gray part. This is called the ribbon, and this is where we have all of our Microsoft Word features. And this is where it can be a little bit overwhelming, but we're really just going to focus on a couple of parts of this taskbar. Specifically, we want to look at File. So here you can see at the top of the screen, you can see File. Next to that, we have Home. We want to look at File, Home, Insert, we skip over Design, and Layout. These 4, plus one other we'll look at later, are where you'll find the majority of everything you need for Microsoft Word. And even within each of these tabs, so if I click on like Insert, you'll see it changes all the options here. Right? Even within each of these, you only need a small handful of them. And we'll go through each of those, where they're located, and how to use them. So first and foremost, we have File. If I click on File, rather than popping up new options on the ribbon, it'll bring us back to this template selector. But you'll also notice on the left side of the screen we have this blue bar, and on the blue bar we have a couple of options, and there's 2 really important ones I want you to notice here. The first one here is Save As. So it's about halfway down through the options on the top of the left side, so Save As. If we click on that, it pops up this menu. And there's a lot going on here, and it can be kind of overwhelming. But what you want to do is usually you'll select Browse, and then you get the File selector, and you can just go to wherever you want to save your files. So you can save to your documents. In my case, I want to save to the desktop, and so we'll save a sample file 3. We deleted sample file 3 earlier, so we'll just do sample file 3. And now we've saved our file. If we go back to File again, we also have directly underneath where Save As was. Now you can see it says Save a Copy. So now you no longer have Save and Save As. Those only appear when you've got a new document. So underneath that you have the Print option. So if you click on Print, that gives you your different options for printing. You'll notice here I can select my printer. I've got a couple of different options here. Now, this one's for a PDF, but if I want to actually print it on my printer, that's this Epson printer here. So I would select that, and then I would go to print. Now it's currently not online, but that's how you would get to print. You can also change several of the settings. We're not going to go into detail on those now, but if you are interested and you want to know more about those, you can reach out to me separately and we can go through those. Okay. And finally, also within the file, I just want to point out here at the very bottom on the left side, you have the options button. Now that gets into some pretty technical stuff, and it can be kind of difficult to kind of wade through it, but you can highly customize your options within Microsoft Word if you go to the options. Alright, next we want to look at Home. Now there's three parts of the Home ribbon we want to look at. First, if you look on the bottom of the ribbon, you can see you've got little titles for each section. You have Clipboard here that I'm hovering my mouse over on the left side. And if we move over to the right, you can see Font. And then move over to the right again, we have Paragraph. These are the three we want to look at. The Clipboard is simply a button for whenever you need to copy and paste anything. Usually, if you have a mouse, you can just right-click, copy, right-click, paste. But if you have, for example, a mouse with only a single button on it, like if you're on an Apple computer, then maybe you need a button for that. So that's there, just so you know if you do need that. Next, we have the Font option. Now the font, this is where we can change a bunch of things about our text, and to kind of better illustrate this to you, I'm going to go ahead and open up another example now. I can go to File here, and I can go to Open, the third option down on the left side. And I'm going to browse through my file picker, and we'll open this one. Well, actually, I think we want this one. Yep. Alright, so here I have the sample document, which holds the Veterans Upward Bound statement. So I want to kind of better organize this information. I want the Veterans Upward Bound program, our mission. This is the title, and I want it to stand out as the title. So there's a couple ways we can do that. First off, I want this to be in a better font. Currently, you can see here under font, this first option, it's Calibri Body. That is the default for Microsoft Word. In a lot of essays, you'll be asked to use Times New Roman. So we'll go ahead and click the drop down arrow, and we can select Times New Roman here. And you'll notice as I hover over the different fonts, it gives us a preview of what it's going to look like. So I'll go ahead and select Times New Roman here. And then let's make it bigger. So I'm going to, next to that, I have this little box here with a number in it. That is the font size. So that's an 11-point font is what it's currently at. And if I hover over the numbers, you can see, again, you get a preview. I want to make it big, but not so big that it takes up 2 lines. So we'll go with font size 18. Now next to that, we have the increase font size and decrease font size buttons. We can use this if we don't want to use the drop down arrow, if you want to quickly change the font size. And next to that, we have the case changing button. So you'll notice that Veterans Upward Bound program, our mission, you'll notice it's in all caps. And maybe I don't want it in all caps. Maybe I just want to capitalize each word. So I can go ahead and click this, and it allows me to change it so that I've only got each word capitalized. Okay. Now, maybe I want to make it stand out more. And there's a couple ways we can do that. And one of those ways is to make it bold. Next to that, we can italicize it. So normally you don't want to italicize a title, but you can italicize, and just so you know, that's there. Next to that, we have underline. If I click on underline, now we've got an underline. Next to that, we have strike through, and maybe if you're doing notes and you want to mark out something without actually deleting it, you can use a strike through to say, oh, that's a mistake. Now if we come down here a little bit, let's say I want to create a citation, and maybe if you've seen like in a book, like in a history textbook, or maybe on like Wikipedia, you'll notice when they do a citation, they put a number, and it's above the words. That's what's known as a superscript. And in order to create a superscript, we'll click on this button here, the X with the 2 above it. So that allows us to create a number above our text, and that can be used primarily for citations. There's other uses for it, like if you're doing math, but there are better ways to write math in Microsoft Word. And we can also create a subscript, which is a number below below the text. So here we can see I've created the number 1 below educate. Okay. And then finally, let's say we want to highlight an important piece of information. Like we want to look at a very specific piece of information. I'll just say Del Mar College Veterans Upward Bound Program. This is just as an example. If I want to highlight that, I can click this highlight button, and it automatically will highlight in yellow by default, but we have this drop down arrow. And let's say you're taking different kinds of notes, maybe, and you want some parts in yellow, but then you want another part in blue, so you can go in here and change the color. Okay. In addition to those options, let's say you have some text that you really want to stand out, like maybe like a warning, don't do this, right? You would bold that text, and then you would underline it, but in addition to that, you can also change the font color here. So you can change the font color, for example, by default to red, because red usually stands out to us. So that's one way you can do that. Okay. Next, I want to look at the Insert tab here. So if I click on Insert, there's a couple of... Oh, actually, no. I want to go back just one second. We want to look at Paragraph first. So Paragraph is the next tab over, or the next subsection over from Font. And there's a couple of things we can do here as well. The first thing I want to point out, and this is really important if you're doing any kind of essay, a lot of time when you're doing an essay, the professor requests that you write your essays in double-spaced format. So in order to do that, we select all of our text. So I click and hold, so I select my text. And I click on this button. It's right above paragraph, right in the middle. And that's the spacing button. And I want it to select size 2. So that creates a double-spaced format. To the left of that, we have options for the alignment of our content. So for example, this is my title. Normally we want our title to be centered in the page. So we can click on this button here. It says center. It will center in the page. To the left of that, we can indent it to the left, or to the right, we can indent it to the right. You also have the option here, which usually won't come into play. It usually only comes into play when you're dealing with pictures, but it's an automatic indentation. It will attempt to figure out the best way to indent your document. Okay, so we'll make that centered. Additionally, above that, we have a couple of options. This is for, again, a lot of times for like maybe if you're taking notes or you want to create an outline for something, you can create bullets. So here we have a bullet point. And if I go in here and I press enter, it creates another bullet point. And maybe I want this bullet point to be indented further inside. So if I press tab, that brings my bullet point back over. So again, starting from my first bullet point, I press enter to make a new bullet point. If I want to tab in, I just press tab to move over. And that creates an indentation so that we can have, this is a subsection. Okay? But maybe I don't want bullet points. Maybe I want numbers instead. And we can do that too. Next to the bullet point option, we have the numbering option. So if I click on that, you'll see instead now I have option 1 and subsection A. And you can continue doing this upon multiple layers, and it's highly customizable. The next option over here, the multi-level list, actually gives you a couple of different templates. So maybe you want 1A Roman numeral I, 1A Roman numeral I. You want it to repeat like that. Or maybe you want to have each level as distinct. Maybe you want different types of bullet points. So you can go in here and change exactly how you want that those bullet points set up. And then finally, we have here to the right of that, we have the indentation buttons. So if I click this decrease indent button, that works just like a tab. So if you don't want to press the tab button on your keyboard, you can use the increase or decrease indentation buttons instead. Okay. All right. Now we go on to the insert section. So within the insert tab, there's a lot of stuff here, but most of it we won't use. The one really important thing that I want you to note from the far left on the pages subsection is the page break button. If I click on the page break button, what it does is it creates a new page. So if I click on that, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Well, it's not wanting to put them side by side. Sometimes it'll put them the pages side by side, but you see now it's created a new page. It's like a new piece of paper. And so maybe if I want to split up my information, maybe I'm creating an essay and I've got a new paragraph and only one sentence is on the first page, but then the next 5 sentences are on the second page. Maybe I just want the whole paragraph on one page. So I would go before the text that I want on the next page. So again, the way I did that, I click on the text before the here, and then I click on page break. Okay. Next here, we want to look at tables, and I'll come back to tables in a little more detail, but for now, just want to note that you can create a table, and if I click on the drop down, it lets me select the size of table I want. And for now, I'm just going to create a 3x3 table, and we'll look at that in a little more detail in a minute. Back here in the Insert tab, under the Illustration subsection, we have the Picture button. Now if I click on the drop-down arrow, it gives us a couple of options. Most of the time, you're going to want to choose this device. That allows you to find pictures on your computer. So I'll click on that, and then I'm going to go to my desktop again, using the File Explorer, and I want to choose the VUB logo. So I'm going to put the VUB logo, I'm going to put it in here with our mission statement. Okay. And then we want to just make that a new line, get rid of the number. And that way with our picture, maybe it looks a little more official. Okay. All right. Also, I want to just briefly mention, if you need to make any kind of shapes or anything like that in Word, you can do that this next option over next to pictures. All right. Also, if you're ever writing an essay, another important thing that you'll have to do a lot of the time is to create headers and footers. Now, most of the time, the type of header that you need is actually a page number. And so what you'll usually be asked for is your last name followed by the page number. The way we do that is we go to the page number option here under header and footer. That's about 2/3 of the way to the right. So you can see my mouse over here. If I click on page number, I want to go to top of the page, and I want to put it in the top right corner. So we'll select plain number 3 here, and we get a number here on the page. Now I'm going to come back out of the header and footer for just a second. Go back here, make another page break. So now we see we have page 1 and page 2. Go back into insert and go back to our page number. Click on that again. So now we can edit it. Now you can see the first page has the number 1 and the second page has the number 2, and it will automatically detect the number of pages and automatically put that number there. But if you want to put your name in there, well, you have to add the name before the 1. Now you'll notice the 1 in the top right corner is highlighted. It's gray because it's been highlighted. Let me zoom in just a little bit here so you guys can see a little better. Okay. So if I start typing now, it will get rid of, well, actually, I guess it's not highlighted. But if it's highlighted like this, right? If I start typing, it will replace the 1. So you'll see that on the next page, the 1 is gone. So you need to be careful, and the way I like to do this is I use the arrow keys to move to the left until it's no longer highlighted, and then I'll start typing my last name, Horton. I'll add a space, and now I have Horton 1, Horton 2, and it'll fill out for every page of my essay or my report. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is the Layout tab. Okay. So I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. Within the Layout tab, there's a lot of options here, but really you won't need to use them most of the time. The only one I just want to make mention of is on the very left side here under Page Setup. We have margins. And the margins, what that does is allows us to change how much text we can fit on a single page. Normally you'll use 1-inch margins around every side of the paper. Sometimes you want to conserve paper, and in that case you might use narrow, which will make everything closer to the edge of the paper. And usually I wouldn't recommend going any smaller than that. Most printers can't handle that if you need to print out your document. But that's how you can change the margins for your file. Also, make sure when you do an essay that you keep your margins normal. But there can be cases where you might need to change your margins. Alright, I mentioned we would come back to tables in a little while, and we will now look at one. I'm going to give us a very basic example for a table. We want to look at student grades. So we want to look at student grades, and I want to have the first column, I want that to be student names. So for the first name, I'll say Joe, and for the second one, we'll say Mary. And then we want to say, well, we've got homework 1, and we've got homework 2. So you can just go in and fill out the table by clicking into each box and then start typing. So you'll just go to where the cursor's at. Let's say on homework 1, Joe gets a 90 and Mary gets an 80. And then on homework 2, Joe gets an 80 and Mary gets a 90. Okay, great. But that's only 2 students. What if I have a third student? How can I add that to the table? Do I have to go back to when I went to insert and go to table? Do I just need to make a new table? How does that work? Well, there's a simpler way. If we go to the bottom of the table, the bottom left corner, and I hover over the line here, I get this little plus icon. If I click on that, it will create a new row within the table. And it doesn't have to be at the bottom. It just has to be over any line here. So if I move to the left edge of the table on any line, I can create a new row. So let's say we wanted these alphabetically organized. Let's say I'm going to add Alex. So I can add Alex in here. Okay. We can also do the same thing with columns. And just like with rows, it doesn't have to be on the end. It can be anywhere in the middle. But we'll go ahead and add one on the end here. Okay. Next, sometimes you make a mistake and you've got too many cells. And I want to get rid of this column that I just created. How do I go about doing that? Well, I can try highlighting them, and we'll try a couple things. The first thing you might try maybe would be the delete button. I mean, it makes sense you would want to delete things. But if I press delete, it doesn't delete the column. Instead, what it would do, and we'll look at this column for an example, if I highlight and press delete, it clears the information within my table. Now that can be useful sometimes, but what if I want to actually get rid of these columns? So I select them, and then I can press backspace. We'll do this one column at a time. So select them, press backspace. And another way we can do it, same idea. We want to select them, right click. Yeah, I got a bit ahead of myself a second ago. And then I can go down here to delete columns, and that will also delete it. Now when you're deleting rows, it's a little bit different. So if I select it and I press backspace, I'll get this pop-up. And this pop-up is just asking, how do you want to shift? Because when you delete rows, it's thinking, okay, well, I need to move the information before, and usually you're just okay to press OK, and it won't mess up anything. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing here. And we can right click, delete cells, press OK, and now we've got our original table again. Alright, one other thing you might want to do with a table is you might want to change the borders. So if we click on our table, you'll notice at the top here in the ribbon, we've got a couple of new options. One of them is table design and one of them is layout. Now we want to look at table design. Now there's a lot of stuff here, but I want to just briefly mention table styles. This allows you to quickly select a style for your table if you don't want to go through and manually change it. I don't really like many of the table styles that are here to begin with, but I usually like to customize mine. But if you just need something quick and dirty that looks okay, then you can come in here and use the table styles. But if we want to customize it a little bit more, let's say we want to remove the line at the top for our we want to remove all the borders on the top but still have the borders for the actual data. What we can do is come over here to the right side under the borders subsection, and we'll click on this borders button, the drop down arrow, and we can individually select, okay, I want to remove the top border, and then I want to remove the left border and the right border. Okay, and now what that's done is I've still got this line here in the middle, but I've got all of the borders on the edges are gone. And sometimes you'll see a table is done like that. Like maybe if you're writing it out by hand, that's how you would do it. Or maybe, for example, you would want to remove the lines along just the edges and only have the inner borders. So let's look at that. If I click here under borders, we also have the all borders option, so that it puts it back to the way it was. And then I want to click on the outside borders button, and it gets rid of all of the outside borders. Alright, finally, we want to look at the bottom taskbar. On the very bottom of the screen, we've got a couple of options that are pretty important. In the bottom left corner, you see a page count. It says page 2 of 2. Now this is important if you need to have a certain length for your essay, but it also has a secondary purpose. If I click on the page count, it brings up this navigation tool here. So if I use the navigation tool and I have a long document, it's very easy to move about my document using the navigation tool. Much faster than scrolling through it manually. Next to that, we have the word count. Now again, maybe you have a specific word count you need to reach for your essay. If we click on the word count option, we get this little pop-up here. And in addition to word count, it also has character count, page count, the number of paragraphs and lines. So if you have specific requirements for an essay, you can look at those here. Now I know a lot of times, like if you're doing a job application, they might say 500 characters or less. Instead of words or pages, they'll say 500 characters. So this is kind of how you can write out your responses, get it to 500 characters, and then paste it into your application. Next to that here we have this proofing button. So this gives us our spell check. If I click on this, it pops up. You see I'm getting an error. It says I've not got any errors with my document, but you can see on the right side it checks for spelling, grammar. It also looks for ways that you can make your writing more concise. So if you've got like a run-on sentence, it'll let you know you've got a run-on. It's a very powerful tool that can help you edit your essays. And finally, on the bottom right corner, we've got a couple of options. The first one is the focus option. If I click on focus, what it will do is it'll make just my document here, and I have a black border. That way, if you can get rid of all the visual noise and just focus on reading the document. In order to get back to the screen I was at before, I just press escape at the top left of my keyboard, and it brings us back here. Now we have a couple of other reading modes here. You'll notice here this one, print layout, in the middle here is already highlighted. That's the kind of the piece of paper layout that you use by default. We can also use the read mode here, which tries to replicate a book, and it'll put pages next to each other. And then to the right of that, again, we have print layout. Just click on that to go back to the way it is normally. And you have web layout, which tries to mimic the way a web page might look, where the text just runs on to the edge of the screen. Then finally, next to that, we have the zoom bar. So we can zoom all the way out. We can zoom out to 10%, or we can zoom in up to 500%. All right. Now that is everything that I wanted to talk about. Just some of the core features of Word that you'll need most of the time when you're writing essays. Thanks for watching this workshop. I hope it has been helpful for you. Please like this video and subscribe so that you can see our content as it goes live.